Hey, how's it going friends? Leo here. This video will be part of a series about efficient team compositions that I use in arbitrations, but also in normal missions. My target audience is mostly newer players who haven't unlocked arbitrations yet, or players who are just starting with arbitrations and are wondering what are good warframes they could bring. Because this is the first video in the series, it will also be introductory to arbitrations, so if you already know about them, feel free to skip ahead. Of course, those who have been playing for a while could still learn a thing or two, and I highly appreciate any feedback you guys can give me so I can improve these videos. That being said, I will do my best to explain things in a little bit more detail for the bits of information that I would have liked to have as a beginner. This way, hopefully, it gives you guys a little bit better idea of what Warframe's more challenging content looks like, or even endgame if you'd like to call it that, and perhaps it can help you plan ahead which warframes and mods you'll need when you get there. Before we begin, I think it's best to explain what arbitrations actually are, so we can all be on the same page. Now, arbitrations are elite alerts which you can access after you have unlocked all the blue nodes on your start chart, essentially completing it. In the navigation menu under alerts, you will see a new alert called Arbitrations, and we can talk about a few things here. Firstly, these alerts cycle every 1 hour, and the mission type and place will be the same for every player. Secondly, you will get 300% ability strength to a random warframe and 300% weapon damage to a random weapon, which is different for every player. Essentially, they try to encourage you to play different frames and weapons, but in my opinion, this will most often not work as well as you'd hope. One reason is because some warframes don't benefit as much from ability strength as others, and in some cases it can actually hinder you. If for instance you wanted to play a speed nova which needs 10% ability strength, and you get a whopping 300% bonus strength to nova from the arbitration, then you'd essentially be playing a slow nova, which is completely different setup and a completely different situation. Another reason is because most frames are better suited for a specific job. A Gara is good at defense while a Saren is good at area of effect damage, so if you bring a Saren to a defense arbitration just because you had a 300% bonus, you or the operative you need to defend will probably die in the first 5 minutes. Or at least that's what typically tends to happen when you queue up with strangers for this alert, and everybody brings some random frame that they have a bonus to, thinking it's all going to work out. Well, it doesn't, and they just end up dead and leaving fast. As far as weapons are concerned, while 300% bonus damage may seem like a lot, in reality, arbitrations start at a much higher level than normal missions, and they scale very fast, so most weapons will be rendered ineffective after a while. Therefore, you're much better off having a weapon which makes sense for your build and for the team composition than a random weapon that you won't be using after 30 minutes. Lastly, let's talk about rewards. You get 50,000 credits for completing the mission and 1 Vitus Essence for every round you finish. That can be 10 minutes of survival or 10 minutes of defense, for example. Now, these Vitus Essences are a unique currency specific to arbitrations, and the vendor to spend these can be found on any of the relays. You can find the arbiters of hexes in the east wing of any relay, and the vendor is right at the entrance. You can see how many Vitus Essences you own in the upper right corner of your screen. Some notable items that you can purchase would be the Amber Star Blueprint, which allows you to transform Cyan Stars into Amber Stars. A very important mod is Power Donation, which you need for Speed Nova. At the moment I'm making this video, this mod can be sold for about 40 platinum on PC. You can also buy the Bleeding Body Ephemera, which is the ugliest ephemera in the game. DE please fix. And lastly, you can buy Archgun Riven mods either for yourself or you can sell them for platinum if your rolls are decent. Now, the best arbitration rewards actually come from the rotations, and if you don't know what a rotation is, let me explain. Let's say you're doing a survival arbitration and every 10 minutes you get a reward. In normal survival missions it's 5 minutes per reward, but in arbitrations it's 10 minutes. So these 10 minutes are called rotations and they start with rotation A. That means after 10 minutes you will get a reward from the rotation A pool of rewards. After 10 more minutes you'll get a reward from the rotation B pool of rewards. And 10 minutes after that you'll get a reward from the rotation C pool of rewards. And every 10 minutes after that you'll only get rotation C rewards, essentially making arbitrations really good reward wise if you play at least 40 minutes. So while in arbitration the rotations are A, B and C to the infinite, the rotation in normal missions are A, B, C and then they repeat again from A. But then again, the rounds take much more time to complete, like I said previously, 10 minutes survival in arbitrations as opposed to 5 minutes survival in normal missions. As a result of that, most arbitration teams I put together usually stay between 1 hour and 2 hours, after which either the enemies become too strong or the party members become too bored, whichever one comes first. Okay, now that we have talked about rewards, let's see what makes arbitrations difficult. First and foremost, as I said earlier, the enemies start at a much higher level than the rest of the star chart, meaning that not only they hit harder, but their effective HP is also much higher. Essentially, this means you can't run around in your MK1 Bratans like it's nobody's business. You need to bring a good loadout that can not only survive long enough, but also deal damage in an effective manner. Secondly, the most dangerous enemy type here are the Arbitration shield drones. These are red little flying drones which give immunity to damage and status effects to nearby enemies, effectively making them invincible, and the only way to deal with them is to destroy the Arbitration drone. The drone itself cannot be damaged by Warframe abilities, only by weapons, which causes a lot of issues with frames which specialize in area of effect abilities such as Sarin. As a result, bringing hard-hitting single-target weapons is very important, and prioritizing the destruction of the Arbi drones is essential. And lastly, one of the hardest aspects is the death mechanic. When you die in arbitrations, you cannot revive yourself, but you can be revived by another player. Once someone is dead, the arbitration drones will drop a red shard on the ground, which can be picked up. With 5 of these shards, you can revive a fallen squad member, but these shards reduce your life and shields the same way shards in the index do. This is often a very dangerous thing to do and can easily lead to many chain deaths, eventually killing the entire squad. The important part about dying is what happens to your loot. So if you died and failed the mission, then anything you picked up off the ground will be lost. Things like Orokin cells, neurodes, neural sensors, cryotic, mods, credits, etc. Anything at all which you picked up from the ground is entirely lost. The only thing that you keep are the arbitration rewards, so all the Endo, Ayaton sculptures, Aura Forma, Ephemera, etc. Those you will keep, so it's not a total loss, but it's a loss nonetheless. Alright, that about covers the important aspects of arbitrations, so now let's finally get into the team composition that I would like to recommend to you. This team composition is one of my favorite in the game, one that works very well in both defense and survival arbitrations, but also in the normal versions. And that is, as you might have guessed already, Octavia and her friends. I say Octavia and her friends because this team is focused on supporting Octavia, who will be the one carrying. The queen of song and dance herself, Octavia, is one of my favorite frames in the game, and in fact, she can do these missions solo as well. But because soloing takes more time and Octavia really shines when she has admirers around her, we will be creating a squad that can help her shine above all others. And it's really very easy for her to shine and be the center of attention because she has one of the best AoEs in the game, and one that scales with the enemies, essentially capable of doing extremely long runs without a problem. And not only that, but she gives stealth to teammates and their pets, among other buffs too. So from all the fanboys and fangirls she can have, she will choose Speed Nova for defense missions and Necros for survival missions. Speed Nova because she makes the enemies kill themselves faster, and in fact this team composition is one that can do arbitration defense missions faster than 10 minutes per turn waves, which is faster than survival. Well, it sometimes depends on the map too, but most time is faster than survival. Speed Nova also provides power donation aura, which helps everybody else in the squad too. And in survival, she wants Necros because life support is the name of the game, and killing enemies faster is not as good as Necros' Despoil for the increased chance to drop life support. And then she wants a Rhyno buff to increase the damage her mallet does significantly, but also to increase the damage the squad deals to arbitration drones, which can get pretty tanky after 1 hour. Rhyno is also a good choice when somebody dies because, just like in the Index, he's not too bothered by the decrease in life and shield since he relies on Iron Skin. So he can be a very reliable resurrector of fallen admirers. A good Rhyno buff is usually above 150% and the best ones above 200%. And lastly, to prevent some unnecessary deaths, Oberon with Phoenix Renewal is amazing. He basically gives full HP revive every minute and a half with minimal effort on his part. Alternatively, a Trinity is also a good admirer with her 75% damage reduction bless, although admittedly she's much more engaged than Oberon. So the way you play this setup is to find a room to hide in both defense and survival. Octavia throws her mallet somewhere far away from the team, but with great visibility to the enemies, which will cause them to kill themselves, while the rest of the squad uses their buffs to expedite the process. Everybody is spamming crouch to remain in stealth and to ensure that the enemies will only see mallet as a target. Staying far away from the mallet is essential because sometimes the enemies throw AoE on top of it, and later on their levels are so high and their damage is so high that it's very easy to get one shot by staying too close to the mallet and taking on AoEs. Overall, this is a relatively easy setup to play and it's very effective. The one with most work will be Octavia, who has to maintain 3 abilities at all times, while the rest of the squad are responsible for their own buffs and also making sure that the arbitration drones are destroyed. For the most part, the most dangerous element in the squad is boredom, so I recommend a good music playlist. Make sure you don't stay in one place for too long because you'll get AFK flagged. Also make sure you loot every once in a while because there's a limit to how many items can be on the ground. Facebook kills squad members sometimes, so it's good to have an Oberon, except for when Oberon himself dies, but that's why you have a Rhyno. And well, if Rhyno dies too, at least Octavia can solo the mission. She'll be sad because her admirers aren't around, but ultimately, she's the star. Okay friends, so now let's talk a little bit about the build, starting with the Queen of Dance and Song herself, Octavia. And right off the bat, I can tell you that if you don't have these mods such as Prime mods, you can simply use the normal version without the problem. The build will still function in the same way. It's just that with the Prime mods it's a little bit better, right? But If you're a new player, this can be a very expensive investment, in which case you should just stick with the normal version. It's perfectly fine. And overall, don't try to necessarily copy my build one to one, so exactly as you see it here. I will do my best to explain my thought process behind it, so after that you can just adapt it to what mods you have access to, and most importantly to your own preference, because nobody can really say that my way is the best way in regards to anything. A lot is based on how you like to play it, right? Alright, so let's see exactly what makes Octavia tick, and mainly is the mallet here. Basically, this is the centerpiece of the whole squadron, is the thing that will kill all the enemies. You throw this little dancing ball on the ground and the enemies shoot it, and in return they take damage that is stored by the mallet. So the harder they shoot the mallet, the faster they kill themselves. And you can help this by adding strength to the build, which will increase the damage multiplier, and also by increasing the duration. So for the longer the mallet is out, the more damage it has time to store up, so the more damage it will release towards the enemies. At the same time, it's important to have a bigger range, so the bigger the range, the more enemies it encompasses. So the sooner they spawn, the sooner they get into the range of the mallet, the sooner they die, overall increasing the kill speed. So I favor here in this build a lot of range, even though ability strength is also very important, but I'm counting on the rest of the team to buff the mallet up and buff Octavia up. So I'm getting a lot of the strength and the damage buffs from the team, therefore I can be greedy with the range. So I put as much range as I can, I put in as much duration as I can so I can store up more damage. Then I splash a little bit of efficiency from the streamline, right? Streamline gives it this 30% efficiency. Then we have a lot of duration with prime continuity, with constitution, with augur message. Then a lot of strength from transient fortitude and, well, just these two right here, augur secrets and transient fortitude. And of course the range comes from stretch, overextended and coaction drift. And in the aura slot, for instance, you can go with energy siphon. If you're having trouble keeping all the abilities up, then energy siphon will help you in that manner. But for the most part you won't be, because the efficiency will help a little bit, and also what will help is Zenuric energizing dash. If you don't have access to a focus school, don't worry, you'll get one later in the main storyline, which I will not spoil for you. And alternatively, or recommendedly, you should get a Sahasa Kubro. The reason why is this ability right here. It says dig. So basically what it does, whenever you're running low on energy, this dog, the Sahasa Kubro, will dig up 3 energy orbs at maximum, which will really help you out with the energy consumption. So basically, if your dog is alive and well, which at some point it does die, because reasons, it is the way it is. So when you have it alive and it gives you energy whenever you're running out, or like below 75%, it starts to dig up energy for you, so you just relax. You're good for energy. Otherwise, you're going to have to use Zenuric in between using the 3 abilities to keep your energy up. And the 3 abilities would be first the mallet, and this is basically your enemy killer. Then you have the metronome. The metronome will basically keep your team, including yourself and all the pets, stealth. And everybody who's crouching near you will basically become invisible. And it also provides a couple of other buffs that are not as important in this setup. The most important is the stealth, and you should make sure to keep this up at all times, because if the enemies don't see you, then they see the mallet, so they attack the mallet instead, and therefore they kill themselves faster. And this is amp. Amp basically doubles the damage and the range of your mallet, so whenever the mallet is out, make sure you use amp as well. And also there will be the second ability. Make sure you do not touch this under any circumstance. The resonator is this a ball which picks up the mallet and walks around like a disco ball, but the problem is it's not very efficient. It doesn't kill very efficient. The enemies will come to you, so the mallet doesn't need to go anywhere. It just needs to stay in one place and be accessible to damage at all times. Oh, also very important, the enemies need a line of sight to the mallet, so make sure you place it somewhere where they can see it very fast. So as soon as they spawn, they see the mallet, they start to shoot the mallet, and the mallet starts to return the damage back onto the enemies. And that's how they die. So big range, as bigger duration as you can get it, splash a little bit of efficiency to be able to keep your energy up. And yeah, strength would be great to have, but you cannot squeeze in anymore, and therefore you get the strength and ability damage from the other party members. Now, if you don't have access to Zenuric, or even if you do, Zenuric will be more than enough to keep your energy up all the time. But if you do not have Zenuric, then what you can do, and what you should do anyway, is add an energy pad. Well, I only have large ones, but you can craft medium ones, and you can get the recipe for the medium ones from your clan dojo, and the large energy one you can get from the syndicates. And you should definitely have some energy pads equipped, because sometimes if you're fighting against, for instance, infested, and they have a lot of energy leechers, then your Zenuric will not be enough to keep your energy up. So you do have to use at least 1 or 2 of those energy pads, just in case. Now, as far as weapons are concerned, the only one I would say that is important is to have like a sniper rifle. It doesn't necessarily need to be a Rubico, or you can go for something like what's it called? You can go for Arcaplasmor. The reason why for these weapons is so you can shoot the arbitration drones as easily and as fast as possible, right? Because if the arbitration drones are up, your mallet is not doing any damage. All the enemies around the arbitration drone are taking 0 damage, right? And therefore you're not clearing the map, you're not doing damage, and more than that, they will come to you and shoot you in the face instead. Well, actually, instead of shooting you, they'll shoot the mallet, right? So they'll shoot the mallet and they'll charge the damage in the mallet, even though they're taking 0 damage all the time. So if you do happen to shoot the drone afterwards and the monsters don't immediately die from the drone explosion, then the mallet will surely finish them off, because yeah, it will have stored a lot of damage. But as a general rule, just make sure you have like a hard-hitting single target weapon. It can be a pistol or a sniper rifle or a shotgun like Arcaplasmor. Anything that can do a lot of damage really fast. And for the melee weapon, it doesn't really matter what you use. If you have the Zenestar, this is a 100 daily login reward. So if you're a new player, you won't have access to this. But it doesn't matter, because you'll be sitting in one place, shooting arbitration drones, throwing your abilities out, and in the meantime just staying as far back as possible. Like, you will not be going near the enemies at any point, so the melee weapon is a little bit moot in this build, so don't worry about it. Now the next one will be Speed Nova. Now Speed Nova, she wants to have as low strength as possible, because the lower the strength, or the lower her strength is, the faster the enemies will speed up. As you can see, the slow is minus 30% now, but it doesn't account for power donation. So you see, this power donation is quite good indeed. Well, you can go without it too if you don't have it, so you can use corrosive projection or well, energy siphon depending on what you need. But as a staple, power donation in a speed nova build is very good. It speeds enemies up as well as fast as they could possibly go. So the faster they go, the faster they spawn, the faster they reach the mallet, and the faster they shoot it, right? The more damage the mallet returns to them. So maybe it seems a little bit counterintuitive, but in this situation is really good. Of course, Speed Nova is mainly for defense missions. You won't necessarily take her in a survival missions. In a survival you take a Necros, and I'll show you a Necros later. But in defense missions, the waves are finished when the enemies are dead. So the enemies are dead faster if they move and shoot faster, and the mallet has time to return the damage. None of the other abilities really matter in this situation. Her only purpose is to spam Molecular Prime. So whenever Molecular Prime is off cooldown, she will use it. With this build, I think it has like 18 seconds or so. Now, one thing that may be a little bit confusing is why the hell would you want a lot of duration if the idea is to right cast this ability which spawns the entire map, so the enemies get sped up by entering it. Well, in reality, the radius or the range of this Molecular Prime is actually affected by duration, and the only thing that the range affects is the explosion damage caused by the primed enemy. So when an enemy gets primed and you shoot him, he explodes for, well, in this case 320, well, actually less probably because of power donation. So that's the only thing that the range affects, so it's basically not that important. The only important thing is this duration here, so it makes this Molecular Prime just spam across the map entirely. And also just make sure it has as low strength as possible. And of course, just splashing a little bit of efficiency with Streamline, because yeah, we don't grow energy on trees, so conserving as much energy in between the casts is important. Yeah, again, if you don't have the Prime version of the mods, use the normal flow. It works just as fine. Well, it's over here. It does make a little bit of difference, but nothing that would break the build. And also for defense, you'd be using Quick Thinking, which is actually a very efficient way of defending yourself when you have a lot of energy. In her case, in Nova's case, she does, so that's great. Again, continuity helps with duration and range a little bit, but it's not that important. More duration, and again, more duration. Just spamming as much duration as possible to make the range of the Molecular Prime as big as possible. For the Excelos mod, it doesn't really matter what you use here. This is very much an option slot, so there's that. Now, the Tigris is not necessarily a good weapon to shoot those things down. This is just mostly my normal Nova, Speed Nova build, but the kit gun is, so if you want to use a kit gun is perfectly fine as well. And again, of course, using the dog for energy together with Zeniric, this will definitely help you a great deal. Alright, so now we have the Desecrate Boy Necros here. Now the Necros is used in the survival squad. His job is basically to give the team extra energy, and therefore his Desecrate should be the highest range possible, which is achieved with Stretch, Overextended, Augur Reach, and Cunning Drift. And also the energy drain is affected by efficiency, so we're using the Despoil Augment, so instead of energy we're spending our life force, right? So our HP in order to desecrate corpses. And therefore we want as big of a efficiency as possible so we don't kill ourselves. Well, you can't kill yourself if you run out of life. So if your life reaches below what is needed to desecrate with despoil, then the ability cancels itself, right? It deactivates. And therefore the most important stats are a range as big as possible, then efficiency as high as possible. Well, 160 is actually enough, I feel. Duration is just a little bit for terrify here. You see sometimes Necros can work as a CC'er, so he scares enemies in his radius and they run away for a set period of time, which is a little bit helpful sometimes. Strength is definitely not needed for this build. And that's about it. And as for weapons, the comb is very good because it helps split bodies apart or break them into multiple pieces, and each of those pieces are actually desecratable. So if you split a body into 2 pieces, then you have an increased chance of getting more loot. So what you want is life support. So splitting bodies into multiple pieces gives you an increased chance at getting life support in a survival mission, which is great. And the Atarax as a melee weapon does the exact same thing with its high slash damage, right? That's what it's doing, those corpse splitting apart or cutting the corpses into multiple pieces. Now, one very interesting thing that I should add, this is more like an off-topic thing, is that you see you have here Helios with the deconstructor, and when you look at it, you see that it doesn't really have, well, it looks very strange, and there's a good reason for that. You see these gladiator mods, in reality what they give you is this bonus, this 45% critical chance multiplier per combo multiplier, right? And this actually applies to your melee weapon. Even though I don't have any gladiator mods on the melee weapon, it still gives me the bonus. So I don't use this deconstructor prime to do any damage. Well, it won't really be doing any damage anyway. The damage would be insignificant, right? So Helios doesn't have like an attack module or precept, right? Like the assault mode, because it's not going to use it. And also because it doesn't attack, it doesn't draw aggro, which helps it keep it alive a lot longer. But yes, this combo works quite nice indeed. Just a little bit of extra goodness for your melee weapon, which is much needed actually. Well, so it actually works the same way. For instance, if you were to use like just give me a second. Well, if you were to use like a sentinel weapon which uses rifle mods like the Cryotra here, which is actually amazing. This is an amazing sentinel weapon because it has 100% status chance, right? So every time it shoots for 4 seconds, and it reloads for 4 seconds. So every 4 seconds it definitely applies these buffs, debuffs right here, right? Viral and radiation. And you can actually change it to apply corrosive and blast instead. So the damage doesn't have to be big, it's actually quite insignificant. But it doesn't matter, as long as it does one amount, like 1 point of damage, then it applies the statuses, and that's what you need. But the really interesting part is that if you put the Vigilante set, and you look at the bonus, which is 20% chance to enhance critical hits from primary weapons, this actually applies to your primary weapon. Even though, well, I do have a Vigilante mod here, but it doesn't matter. Even if I didn't have it here, I would still benefit from this set, from this 20%. Well, actually, if I change this, you can see, going back to the primary weapon, you can see that the set bonus is gone, and now it's only 5%. So that is very valuable to get to know. So you can do either one. So you can either do the primary weapon bonus from the vigilante, right? So you can use the comb and enhance your comb, which breaks bodies apart, which again helps with desecrate over here. Or you can do with melee weapons. So Necros is a little bit flexible in this manner. I prefer it with the melee weapon. This is just personal preference. But it's very good to know that you can use these as a stat stick. All these set items that you can equip, set mods that you can equip as a stat stick for the primary weapon and for the melee weapon. Okay friends, so now let's talk about big boy Rhyno here. Now Rhyno's role in this squad is basically to use his roar, which is an AoE buff, and it also increases the ability damage and the weapon damage at the same time. It doesn't affect ability strength, but instead ability damage. So if your ability doesn't do any damage, it doesn't affect it, but in case of Mallet it does, and this is a very welcome buff. And as I stated previously, it also helps buff your weapon damage, which is helpful against the arbitration drones, because later on, at least after 1 hour of gameplay, they're a little bit tankier, so this definitely comes into handy. The build itself is quite easy to make. Basically, you just need as the highest strength you can possibly put on it, highest ability strength, and a little bit of duration so it lasts a little bit longer in between the casts, so you have time to get more energy to recast it. So therefore we have prime continuity, which gives us duration, like I said. Then we have strength. From Augur Secrets we have energy conversion. Now this is a very interesting one, because first you need to find an energy orb to activate this, and when you do have it active, you'll have like a blue effect flowing around you, so you know it's active. So when you do use it, you get this 50% extra. So this is a really huge increase, but yeah, it has like a gimmick that you need to play into to access it. So it's good. This is energy conversion is mostly good on Warframes, which only need to use one ability. And Rhyno here fits perfectly into this condition, because the only ability he needs to keep up is his roar. Of course, he can still use his iron skin, but he does that at the beginning, and then he forgets about it because he's sitting in stealth all the time, so he's not really taking damage. And if he needs to refresh it, he can, it's not a problem. So basically the only ability he needs to use is his roar. So energy conversion is perfect for him. Then more strength at the cost of efficiency. So the efficiency is terrible on this Rhyno here, but he does have just about enough energy to cast one roar, and in that 40-second or 38-second window, he has enough time for him to get more energy. Octavia actually gives energy passively, and also there should be some people, or at least Octavia with the dog in the squadron, so there will be energy orbs lying around all the time. So energy is definitely not the problem for Rhyno boy here. And again, transient fortitude, more energy at the cost of duration. I think that strength, well, more strength at the cost of duration. I think strength is just more important here, even though duration is also important, but strength is the most important. And 38 seconds I feel like is an ideal amount of time to have on your buff. Again, intensify for more strength. Then iron shrapnel and ironclad charge here are still for the iron skin. This is just my personal preference, so I can actually use the iron skin like I would normally. It's not as good as it would be with the tank build, but it's still good enough to keep him alive. And especially if one of the squad members dies, then Rhyno has well, a much easier time going around getting those energy shards, or those shards, what they're called, the 5 shards to revive your fallen squad member. And for the aura, it uses growing power, and this is good for the entire team. There's actually a trick to use this without actually shooting your weapon to proc status. So when you proc status, you get 25% increased ability strength. So ideally you'd want to have this procced before you press roar, right? So before you use roar, you want to shoot an enemy with your weapon. Well, if you're in stealth, this technique doesn't particularly work because in stealth your companion won't attack. But in any other situation, like in normal gameplay, or if you're not in stealth, then your companion will attack here with the Cryotra, which has 100% status chance, which means that as long as you're not in stealth and your companion can attack, then what it happens is that it automatically procs this growing power. And this works, of course, for every squad member, including Octavia. So if you do have a Rhyno Prime with growing power, then you might consider as Octavia to shoot the enemy first with your sniper or whatnot to proc this, and then throw your mallet out, which will, well, it will have like a slightly bigger multiplier, so the enemies will die faster. Well, it's a little bit of extra goodness, it's not necessarily breaking it or anything. Alternatively, again, you can use, where is it, corrosive projection. So you see here what happened is that I put corrosive projection and the polarity still works, is still in the green. That is because I have applied an aura format to my Rhyno Prime, and this is one of the frames on to which I would recommend that you do use an aura format if you have it, because Rhyno is one of the frames which does benefit from growing power. By default, I think that all the frames is important that they have a dash polarity here, so they can use corrosive projection, which is extremely important. But if you don't necessarily fight against Grenier and you want the extra goodness from the ability strength from growing power, then this is an option that you can take advantage of. So that is Rhyno, pretty simple. Yes, of course, he uses Opticor, which is good for one-shotting the arbitration drones instead of a sniper, but I still have a pistol just in case. Okay, so here we are with the slacker in the team, who is Oberon. Now Oberon has pretty much one job and one job only, and that is to use Renewal. Now Renewal gives the team members life regen, and when the Oberon uses this augment, Phoenix Renewal, every team member who takes fatal damage, so if they're going to die, instead they're going to be made invincible for 5 seconds, which is amazing. And they will also be healed by 50%, but in conjunction with this renewal, in those 5 seconds you'll pretty much be healed fully. And this has a 1.5 minute cooldown. And I cannot tell you how many times this actually saved me from some accidental death by some AoE or some mistake that I did, so this is great. Again, of course, if you don't have Prime mods, use the normal versions. If you don't have Umbral mods, use the normal version. If you don't have the Prime version of the frames, like Rhyno Prime, Oberon Prime, etc., use the normal versions. Everything works just as fine with the normal versions. This is more like a end game, late game, when you have a lot of resources to spare. But if you use the normal versions, it will still work just as fine. No joke, no scam, no difference. So don't worry about it, it's still good. Okay, so how do I have him built? Well, a lot of strength, because you see strength affects this healing over time which it gives, and healing over time is very useful in many situations. If you take damage from some AoE cloud or some toxin cloud or some you're sitting too close to the mallet and some enemy shoots you, this renewal will definitely help you if you don't die outright. So at high enemy level, so after 1 hour, it's possible that you'll outright die on some frames. So maybe you won't get healed, but up to that point is very nice to have this healing regen. And then it also synergizes the high ability strength with hollow ground. So hollow ground puts this carpet of flowers on the ground, and it gives your allies status immunity, which is super good. And this hollow ground synergizes with renewal, so when you cast this hollow ground, and everybody should be affected by renewal, then you get some increased armor affected by ability strength. So there we go. And of course, the fourth ability, Reckoning, synergizes with hollow ground. So if you have hollow ground on placed on the floor, and enemies come and sit on your hollow ground, then you cast Reckoning, and you'll most likely not kill them, but you'll reduce their armor. So it CCs them and reduces their armor, so it's a little bit of nice CC. But in my experience, all Oberon will do is cast this renewal at the beginning of the game, of the mission, and then he'll go on Facebook, Twitter, or whatnot, YouTube. Like, he won't be really participating. Like, simply having Phoenix renewal is just about enough to have it in the team. And of course, efficiency affects this renewal because it uses energy over time. So you may run into some energy issues, but with all the energy orbs that should be around you, you shouldn't really have a problem. I never seen anyone in my party have a trouble with energy because, yeah, my dog gives them energy, and sometimes they just use some energy orbs from somewhere. Like, it's not a big deal. But if it does become a big deal, then rage over here, so whenever he takes damage, it transforms it to energy. Mostly you won't be taking damage because you're in stealth, so taking damage is a bad idea, but in other situations it will work just so. Like, you won't have trouble keeping this renewal up. Then of course, strength, duration is a little bit good. Yeah, more strength, more vitality to stay alive, so it makes him a bit tanky, and especially in conjunction with this adaptation. And that's about it. Again, growing power, but you can use corrosive projection if you have an aura forma, or maybe if you want to have a dash polarity is a good idea. Nobody will ever say no to corrosive projection. Growing power is a little bit of extra goodness that sometimes you may or may not need it all that much. Okay, so finally here we are with the best girl, Trinity. Now, Trinity can be used instead of Oberon, but I generally prefer Oberon. However, Trinity is really fantastic even so. However, she takes a little bit more involvement, like I previously said, and that consists in the fact that you need to recast Blessing every 27 seconds. If you don't cast this Blessing, sometimes in that gap that you don't cast it, sometimes somebody will die, and that happens a lot. So whenever I take a Trinity with me, they usually just forget to recast this very often, and somebody gets really cocky because, yeah, you have this 75% damage reduction, so they think they're invincible. They run around and doing all this stuff that they shouldn't be doing, and they die in the process. And when I look at the Blessing, it's not up. So that's what I mean that I prefer an Oberon, because Oberon just casts his renewal and then he can safely go in AFK like he usually does. But the Trinity, if Trinity AFKs, then everybody has a problem. Well, when Trinity does play very well, then this 75% damage reduction is quite something to acknowledge. Is very, very good. So how do I have her built? Well, you just put enough strength so you can reach this 75% damage reduction because it's affected by ability strength. I don't remember how much you have, but I think 155 is more than enough. And then the rest you want it to go into duration, right? So you don't want to stress yourself with recasting this way too often. Is an incredibly strong buff, so that's why the duration is not as high as the other buffs. So that's that. Of course, a little bit of efficiency here, just so you don't starve yourself on energy too much. The range is absolutely inconsequential because Bless is affected by affinity range, and because everybody's camping in the same spot, it's very rare that somebody, well, the only time people go outside of the formation or far away from Octavia is when they need to get loot, and that happens usually when there's not much going on anyway. So shouldn't have a problem recasting this. Apart from that, it's pretty standard. Right now you should kind of get the idea. I mean, continuity for duration, strength, more duration, efficiency is needed, more duration, a little bit of vitality. So in reality the 75% damage reduction is great, but is even further amplified in effective health points as long as you have some vitality there to boost those EHP up. Then more duration and prime flow for energy, because sometimes you might run out of, well, I suppose you can use something else other than prime flow, but I prefer it that way. And here you see coaction drifts, which boosts the aura efficiency. Like overall, Trinity has a little bit of breathing room, so you can do some other things, or if you don't necessarily have these mods. Of course, coaction drift works very well with corrosive projection, that's why I use it. But I suppose you can use something else that you prefer, but it doesn't really make much of a difference, especially in this setup or this team composition. So I believe we are done with the frames then. Alright, so here we are close to the end of the video. I thank you guys if you managed to get through all of this. I know it's a lot of information, but I wanted to be as thorough as possible. This team composition is my favorite so far. Pretty much whenever there is survival or defense up, I always use this formation. Like I said, it's very efficient, and the best part is that each individual squad member doesn't have like a very difficult job to do. Everybody has like a split part, like a small portion, and it's almost fail proof, I would say, because of Oberon, because of the stealth mechanics, because people don't need weapons to, like, great weapons to carry them. So because the mallet is such an efficient tool of killing, it just saves a lot of pain. Like if you try to do it, if you try to queue up randomly with random people in arbitrations, you'll notice that they play a lot of Inaroses, a lot of tanky stuff, and that stuff is great at least at the beginning, but after 40-50 minutes it starts to, you know, fail. Their weapons are not so good, or, you know, the enemies just hit that much harder, and it's very stressful too, because you're always pressed. You know, you have to always keep in the back of your mind, well, if I die I lose all my loot, so should I go extract now? What do I do? It's always a problem. Like if someone dies, even if you play in Aros and you try to revive them, you're losing a lot of health. So I find that this build is just so good and so efficient. There's like an answer for all the situations, whether if someone dies, or, you know, you're getting statuses on you, or, you know, all sorts of situation. And the best part is that it's very, very relaxed, to the point where people are saying, well, I'm kind of getting bored here, and which is a really great thing, because if you're going to farm arbitrations for Endo or for Platinum or for whatever reason, it's better to do something that's easy, so you don't waste so much energy. So after 30 minutes you're like sweating and being super tired after it, right? With this build you're just chilling in your corner, You just press your button and you shoot some drones and collect your loot, and that's that. Like, very slim chance of doing something wrong because you have so few things to do right? So there's that. Well, one thing I should mention, if you're having trouble finding people to invite in your squad, so maybe you're not in a clan or you're new to the game and you haven't met a lot of people, then the way to do it is to go to the recruitment chat and find people there. Usually, well, that's how I do it usually, but it doesn't take me more than 10 minutes. So I just ask in recruitment chat. I usually play Octavia, but if you have like other frames which can fulfill these roles, then if you're more flexible, it'll be easier for you to find people faster. But I find that Octavia has somewhat of a tougher job, so I play her instead. I just enjoy playing her more. So that is that. Okay, friends, I think I have covered everything that I had in mind. I hope you guys find this video informative, and if it helps at least one person, then I consider it a success. If you have any feedback or questions, please leave them in the comments. I promise I will read through all of them. If you want to see more team compositions, then consider leaving a like on the video, just to let me know that is something that you enjoy. And if you do leave a like, then I will personally visit you on the orbiter and hand deliver you an aura forma dispenser. That is correct, an aura forma dispenser. This way you can get any number of aura formas that you need for your builds, no materials needed or anything. This is not a scam. If you leave a like, then the next time you go on a mission, I will sneak aboard your orbiter and drop you an aura forma dispenser, gift wrapped and everything. Once again guys, thank you very much for watching and have a blasting day. Peace.